Dawson.
James Dawson. And here again, I was elected in November, and we'll have another election next November.
There you go, 2 years. Then we have our chief race director.
It comes with a feathered hat and everything.
You wear one. That or a sweeper.
Yeah, definitely sweeper.
There you go. And then the treasurer, our treasurer is Dee over there with the camera. She's recording the
You
meeting.
gotta point the camera.
We have one who's absent, that's David Barnhart.
Okay.
He's not only the vice president, he's the responsible party.
Yeah.
Which, if you know anything about IRS, when you file for an employer ID number, a tax number, you have to identify a responsible person. And it was initially my father, and then he became less and less responsible. So anyway, so David did us a really kind of favor. He's kind of hosts a lot of board meetings.
And I'm just a member at large, and they decided to have me on board to try to promote the women's cycling team. So I'm kind of heading that off, but then we're bringing in the guys. They're going to hang out with us too. So, and to become a member, Ed was asking, and you were actually telling Tom the history of each.
In January it's on our way back from the Talladega, Anniston area. We go through that Piedmont area. We're not far off.
Okay.
So if we load up and roll out early enough Monday morning, and 3 or 4 of us wanted to do a preview ride, Stuart was wanting to do a preview ride of the road race course for the Anniston for that Sunday King ride. That would be Monday. He says around 30-ish miles. So we're talking a couple-hour ride. More of a preview than it is a, hey, let's hammer it and see if we can knock this out real quick. But it would be something we could, especially if the weather is favorable. Now, if it's 14 degrees Monday morning, I'm heading back to Huntsville. If it's sunny and 60, you know, it just depends on what January we get around here, right? But that's something we can play with and see.
Is there a climb? Is that a climbing course? Is there a big climb?
Stuart said there's 3 or 4 rollers. There apparently was a gravel section that he was hoping they would use. He's got a thing for gravel, if y'all don't know that. He's got a little
Are
Tom
you
Holt in
talking
him.
about the Now, the road race is only open to Pro 1, 2, 3.
No.
They opened it up.
Yeah.
It's different this year.
It's
I said
wide
McClellan was
for all
one
of
too
it.
last
McClellan was.
Yes,
This is the Piedmont. This is a
we're
different,
going back.
they're going back to the
Okay,
Piedmont.
so it's open to 4 5s.
It's open to all categories. We have
Alright.
masters, we have women's.
Yep.
There's probably just gonna be one women's field, but they may have a, kind of a,
Yeah, split up. into
yeah,
groups.
yeah.
They want to try to be more of a
That's that's the impression I got. He said it's gonna be way it used to be.
Yeah. 'cause
Stuart
that was-
says, we're in.
Alright.
It's on, so.
That's awesome.
The last year they had it, I think Puritan won his masters category.
Okay.
So if you're asking what kind of race would Puritan win, you know, it's that kind of race. Puritan's a climber, but he's not a pure climber, so he's, yeah.
Okay, so January is the camp. Now, if he has the Suma Tango, last year the Suma Tango started January 21st.
She did, it was early.
Yeah, we'll talk about that from his multitude of experience as an ultra marathon runner.
I ran with Tom for several years at lunchtime.
Dublin boys!
Yeah, where you had to qualify by running the horseshoe till you
That's
almost
right.
threw up.
Wow, you're right.
Yeah,
Wow,
so-
that's so cool.
Yeah, I volunteered to talk about this. I've got about 7 years as an ultra marathon runner. I've got 3 or 4 years as a cyclist. I was a gym rat. I used to lift weights just for its own sake. I did weight training for running. I did weight training for cycling. I've worked under a coach. I'm a NICA mountain bike coach. That doesn't make me a certified coach, I can't say. I'm not a certified nutritionist. I'm not a certified personal trainer, nor am I a certified coach. But I have some experience. Sally is a medical doctor, okay? So she has knowledge that, in-depth knowledge I can't touch, so.
She's got the degree.
Yeah, but I don't have the practical knowledge that you have.
I don't know. But I just basically want to lead a discussion. And if anybody, Tom's got a lot of experience. A lot of people here have experience. So just jump in with something if you know something, if you want to add something. But I just kind of wanted to lead a discussion about it. So the 3 major topics are nutrition, weightlifting, and training, especially winter training. And so for each of these, I just want to talk a little bit. I think the first point to make is this is really complex stuff. I mean, this is, at the center of all this is the human body. It's a very complex machine. It works in a social setting. You have to balance everything you're doing with your social and your work life. It's very difficult to say what works. I've had experiences where I've had great races where I far exceeded my expectations, and it made absolutely no sense because I had not been training nearly enough to do what I did. Or on the other hand, I've trained very, very hard and with a lot of discipline leading up to an event, and I've entered the event and it's just was a complete bomb. So there are a lot of times where you really can't tell what works. And the literature on it can be very confusing. The science on it can be very confusing, and there are a lot of things that are still unknown. So I encourage you to get out there and educate yourself. Pick up some books. That's the number one thing. I've read a lot, and I've found that very useful to an extent. And then beyond that, of course, it takes a big commitment. If you want to do well, you do have to commit to it. Very few people have the genetics to just mess around and win. They do exist. They're very rare. And even if you do have that gift, if with a higher level of commitment, you can take yourself a lot farther. Okay, so I want to talk about these three things. And the format's kind of some low-hanging fruit. What can you say with some definitiveness about these three things? What are some myths you can dispel? And then just some basic information that I've learned about all three of them. So first one is nutrition. You've got nutrition in general. How do you eat on a day-to-day basis when you're training? How do you eat during your heavy phases of training and after you work out? And what do you do during your racing? I think one of the biggest myths, if we're going to talk about that first, is the myth of replacement. So the myth that during an athletic event, you need to replace all the fluids you're losing, and you need to replace all the calories that you are burning. This is not true, unless you're trying to set an Appalachian speed record, where over that very long period of time, of course you have to replace the fluids you're losing and the calories you're burning. But for us, for a maximal 2-hour event, let's say, you do not need to replace all the fluid and all the calories you're burning. If you try to do that, your body will not absorb it all, and guess what happens? One of three things, right? For cyclists, it's not.
Digest.
Is that your problem? Pretty sure that's my problem. Okay.
It'll slosh around. It's not as bad for cyclists as runners, but it'll slosh around in your belly, or it'll come out one of two other ways, partially digested. And I've had experiences with that. So.
Stewart even had issues at the marathon last weekend.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and that just goes to prove show you that he's one of those genetic freaks that you had talked about.
Pretty
he
much.
just decides to run a little bit, and he just goes run the marathon and checks off the bucket list.
Pretty much.
It runs a 304.
Yeah, sub 4
And a
marathon.
304, yeah.
But I was surprised to hear how common that was, especially in marathon running, the stomach issues.
I think it's from this. Everything's just jiggling around a lot more.
Yeah.
I mean, the problems in that respect seem a lot bigger with running. And that brings me to a recommendation I would make for a book. The best book I've ever read about training and racing is called The Lore of Running. And I'm sorry it's not called The Lore of Cycling. It's written by a medical doctor named Tim Noakes. He's a South African. It's about a 900-page book. If you're ever injured, an injured athlete is still an athlete. You should still train. It's the perfect time to train your mind. He goes over all kinds of basic physiology, all of the details of the way the body stores and uses different forms of energy, how diet relates to training. There's all kinds of great stories about great athletes in there. And he himself is an avid ultramarathon runner and cyclist. So there's actually a lot about cycling in there. But it's a humble book with a lot of information. And what you come away with is that it's hard to put your finger on a lot of things, like what causes cramps. Everybody thinks it's low electrolytes, right? They cannot correlate cramps with low electrolytes. They've tried to correlate cramping with fluid and electrolyte status, and they can't do it. It's more of like a neurological type phenomenon. And you may know more about this.
No, that's
So.
perfectly reasonable, yeah,
Yeah.
just all the electrolytes, all the salts and things like that. And I think it's also exhaustion.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're overtrained, then you
Right.
start to cramp, or you just don't warm up properly, you cramp.
It's your body's way of trying to tell you, slow down. You're killing me.
Oh, yeah.
So you gotta go back to training.
Yeah,
And weights helps.
yes.
I don't do enough of it.
Yeah.
So my favorite book is by a guy named Fitzgerald's Brain Training for Runners.
Mhm.
And it talks about some of those type phenomena, like if the breakdown that you occur, that you have happen, is purely physiological, then how do people have that final kick at the end of runs? Which happens all the time. And the truth is, it's your brain telling you can't do it, not your muscles telling you. It's a fabulous book, and it's what got me my PR, my marathon PR, that book did.
What was the book again?
Brain Training for Runners by Fitzgerald.
That kind of flows together with what Tim Noakes says about, so the only slant that book, the Lore of Running book has, I would say, is his pet theory called the central governor theory, which is exactly that. It's really something in your mind that limits your performance, and it's not just your weakness or your inability to push through. There's a governor in your mind that keeps you from killing yourself.
Right, yeah, so it's not you being weak-minded.
Yeah.
No, it's your brain thinking you're going to kill you.
You better stop before you run out of enough glucose to fuel your brain or something.
There's a simpler book that our coach had us read, it's the Mind Gym. The Mind Gym, it's a really easy book to read and small, but it's just story after story about how people overcome sports adversities through positive thinking. And they actually have a psychologist on a lot of the professional teams coaching the players in their mind. Because they always
Cool.
perform well when your mind is not set.
A
It's
lot
the
of
Mind
this
Gym.
is the book saying you can teach yourself. No, you can do this.
Positive thinking,
Yeah.
basically, yeah. And visualizing the success in your
Yep.
mind.
And it is real. My breakthrough athletic performance, I guess, was a run. It was actually the Decatur 10K and Mike Allen showed up from the first place athletics.
Oh, yeah.
And I just really wanted to impress him. I didn't know he knew who I was, and he said, "Hey Brian, how you doing? You're looking like you're in good form today. What are you trying to do?" And I said, "I kind of like to finally get under 40 minutes." And he said, "Come on." And he absolutely would not let me slow down. I ran a 37:59, which is not great, but that was 2 minutes, and that was the first time I realized how much pain you can put yourself through. It was incredible.
Yeah.
And what you can do, when you think that you have taken your last breath, what you can do after that is just amazing. So,
You mentioned weight training.
Yep.
I've never been in the gym ever.
yeah.
I would like to know what you do, your routine first.
Okay, so if we get to weights, let me say the last couple of things about nutrition. There are a couple of diets out there, vegan and paleo. There are all kinds of diets. Dee's a diehard vegan. She'll tell you her reasons. I know diehard paleo people. They have their sources. So if you want to look into that, I've got some recommendations for books on that as well. And I'm sure she's got plenty of recommendations as well.
On vegetarian, is that what you said?
Vegan.
Vegan
yes.
vegetarian.
Vegan versus vegan.
Scott,
Vegan
you're-
versus
Paleo versus vegan.
Paleo.
It's about as opposite as
There's a book by
Things they can eat.
there's a book by a guy named Staffan Lindberg. It's a widely inner science book with a solid orange cover called Food and Western Disease, and this is the Paleo Bible. And it is so well referenced it's almost
Staffan.
impossible to read. Staffan Lindberg, Staffan Lindberg. It's thick with data, and I'm not saying I ascribe to it. That's just a reference. So on weights, Nick, what I wanted to say about that.
Before-
Yep.
Sorry,
Yeah.
before you switch from nutrition to weights,
Yes.
I have a question. What are your thoughts about people that release too many salts on their bodies when they are working out? I don't know if you have seen that, but for example, it happens to me before I finish a ride, I finish fine, and then when I look in the mirror, I'm all white around here and white around my arms and everything.
How do you feel?
I feel fine.
Do you take on electrolytes while you're riding? Sports drink? You don't just
I
drink
don't
pure
do a lot
water?
of nutrition. I just go by what I ate that day. And that's about it. The only nutrition that I have is just water and maybe a little bit of Gatorade.
Yeah.
The powder Gatorade that you mix with water.
I personally do a lot better with a little bit of electrolyte in my drink. And taking on, you know, if you eat a gel, most of the gels contain electrolytes in addition to the sugars.
So would that be because of the lack of electrolytes in my body or?
No, it's just your physiology. Some people sweat
Supposed
salt.
to be.
Yeah.
Brian?
So nothing
Yes.
to be worried about.
No, not at all. I mean, Christy does it all the time. She's just, she's as white can be. And then I don't sweat at all. So I'm the opposite. So it just depends on your physiology. And then as long as you're not cramping or having problems, then you're fine. I mean, you don't need extra stuff unless you feel like you need it. I mean, Steve Swan has me like, water, that's it.
I've been-
Nothing to eat,
So,
right?
yeah, I used to
Because
do
you're gonna-
just water
Yeah.
before, but then I started noticing that on me and I say,
Worry
probably
about
some
it, yeah.
electrolytes or something. That's when I started using some Gatorade,
Mm-hmm.
just Gatorade. And still happens, so.
No, it's not gonna stop. I don't think there's any way to stop. That's just your normal body way of sweating. Some people have a lot more salt content.
And
It
you'll
was all
realize
about
less
trial
than
and error, like getting ready for Ironman. I have to take those, I have to take salt tablets or sport legs every so many intervals. For all the short races, I had to have water only. Something about having a high heart rate, and I can't drink the nutrition in a bottle.
Mm.
So I would, you know, like take a goop before, just to get a little caffeine jolt to kind of prolong you, but, I mean, if you're going out for like a 2.5 hour ride, go ahead and carry your nutrition just like you are when you're gonna race, and that's
So during the race, something to mention, you can take on approximately 200 calories an hour. That's not reasonable. That's what I've been told. That's my experience. About 200 calories an hour, a goo every 30 minutes or so, if you need it. During a criterium, there's no need to take on any sugars. I mean,
Barely have time to drink.
Brian, can I say something?
sure, yeah.
3 things that I found, like,
Dee has something to share.
I'm just gonna share this. Well, when I did my first marathon, like you say, it's mind at the very end. And the last 2 miles, it was like, I just want to stop. I want to stop. And this lady had honey. And you know, in the scripture, when Jonathan was exhausted, what did he eat? And they have done studies. They have found that pure raw honey will give you energy when you're ready to just go down.
Yeah.
And they have found that, what's that called? Beet juice. Beet juice will keep you from cramping. I've never seen anything like it.
Is that because it makes you throw up?
Yeah, well, you got to get certain kinds. But I know when I was coming back, but yeah, you do have to watch because it will give you the runs too.
The red
But
run.
when I was coming back from nationals, because with God's blessing, I did all 3 of the races, my legs were like, ugh. And so I drank a whole quart of pure beet juice. But I mean, I totally relaxed. I didn't have any cramps. And folks, the big thing about salt, how many of you have heard of what they call real salt? Any of you? If you go to Kroger's, and people have been telling me about this, and I thought, salt is salt. It's not. You will see a big difference. If you go to Kroger's or you go to the health food store and you get what they call real salt, it is salt that's actually mined from the ground, from a dead sea. It's saltier, it's pure, and you'll be amazed. And if you use it every day, you use it, there's a big difference, a really big difference. The regular salt you get in the store, they put it in a kiln, it goes through a big alternate, it actually alters the chemistry in it, and it's not absorbed like it should be, plus they put fillers. But if you get that real salt, it is super good. You'll be amazed. Even though it's expensive, it's worth it.
But the thing with riding is they say if you fast during the ride, training rides that is, mostly, you'll burn into your fat stores. And so your body becomes more efficient at burning fat rather than doing goos and things like that. And usually if you do a goos, they say every 30 minutes to an hour you have to do another one. And then your stomach's just full.
Well,
It's
what
really-
you don't wanna take too many, that's for sure,
Yeah,
because
really,
it
you're
will
supposed
not digest and it will come out in other ways.
The
Yeah.
marathoners and the Kenya guys, I understand, they'll just do like chia seeds in water and they'll run marathons.
They do pull their special bottle off their rack, if you notice, when
Uh-huh.
they're running.
Yeah, and that's it.
And they eat a lot of kale,
Yeah,
a
but
lot of kale.
But they burn fat while they run and they're very efficient.
They only run for 2 hours, Sean.
Yeah, I know, they get done so quick. It takes them 2.5 hours to run a marathon, it should be taking 6 hours.
But
Lightweights.
Oh, they're for 4.
6 for me.
the thing is though, they're also running at like 90%, 95% VO2 max, which means their body absolutely has to burn carbohydrates. You can't burn fat fast enough. You can burn a higher percentage of fat, right, by trying to do that conversion. And that's something, Brian Sumner's tried that, go into ketosis and train your body to burn more fat.
Ryan and Karen were trying that this
Yeah.
year.
And I
Said they
think,
felt like crap the whole time.
Yeah.
But it does supposedly teach you how to burn fat.
then you carbo load before,
Yeah, when you carbo before the race.
but there's a million different strategies.
That's the thing, it's
That's
like
the
there's no
trouble.
one thing.
Right.
And I think there's always a fad, whatever the new thing is,
Yeah.
you know, so a lot of success really comes about with, I mean, I think a lot of it's weight, right? If you carry an extra weight, it's not gonna work, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that, you have to prepare months ahead to be at your race weight when you wanna be. And then the other is your genes.
Yeah, that's even more planning.
You screw up picking your parents.
Yeah,
What we
exactly.
can do with the weight thing is, I'll type up a workout, I mean, from what I've gathered, and then we'll just email it out as far as specifics of, you know, what kind of weights. Cause I was like doing, 10 to 12 reps, 3 reps, and Steve Swan's like, no, not for cycling. I'm like,
Cycles will say, oh, yeah.
You want
just
more reps?
you want lighter weights?
Fewer reps, heavier weight, and then
No,
2 days
no.
later you'll say, oh yeah, high reps, low weight. I'm like, wait.
And to do it right, you actually do a strength test, and he sets all of the weights that you do based on your strength test. It's a lot like an FTP test. So, before I say that though, I mean, the foundation of weight training is form. You have to have good form. And that's a lot easier when you're doing lighter weight and high reps. But whatever you do, don't do the typical male thing and go in the gym and get the biggest weight you can and do a curl like this. I have not seen a good curl in years. I literally have not seen a good curl in the gym. So, but, you know.
Momentum.
Yeah, that kind of goes without saying. But the workout I do is, it starts out with 10 or 15 repetitions, 3 by 10 or 15 on the squat rack, and that'll work up to 3 by 40 reps, 3 sets of 40.
My goodness.
Yeah, and the only thing that's kind of low rep that he has me doing is leg press, be 3 by 8. And you'll step that up steadily until you
That's the
peak in the weight
big
room.
one you want.
On top of that, a very important one is straight leg deadlifts. You'll start out doing maybe 10 or 15, and eventually you'll be doing 3 by 20 straight leg deadlifts. And you'll also do leg curls 3 by 20 repetitions at the peak. And it's 20 repetitions, but it is a weight such that the last rep of the last set, you can just barely do it. I mean, it's tough. It's hard. It really puts the screws to you. Leg extensions are not called for. They've gotten a really bad rap. They can cause something with symptoms a lot like runner's knee. They're not included.
I had to quit those after, 2 surgeries and stuff, yeah.
What are leg extensions for those?
It's-
Putting the weight on your
Oh, okay.
ankle. This-
Extending, yeah.
so
They
it's all-
say it's a quad thing, but it's
Got it.
not good for your
It's a knee
knees.
thing.
It's a knee thing, yeah, I got bad knees for that.
Yeah. So you do it all with leg press, and they're
Which is essentially what we're doing with the pedals. We're pressing the pedals, right?
Right.
So we're not ever,
yeah.
we say we clip in, we pick up the pedals. We're pushing the pedals, right?
That's right. And that's the one kind of little bit more powerlifting exercise that is done, and that's to get your sprint power up. And Steve Swan heavily supports that too. you know, sprint power through leg training. Another one is rows. Stewart has, I use a row machine, you know, and there are different varieties of this. There's a row machine where you have two independent cable pulls and you pull them down the side like that. Nice full extension. What he had me doing was a bent over row where you have free weights. You've got the barbell and you're standing like this,
Yeah, you're on the.
doing that.
Yeah.
And it's, again, 3 sets of 20. Let's see, what else was on there? Weighted sit-ups, not crunches. Crunches shorten some muscle. What is it, the soleus? Crunches tend to shorten that muscle and adversely affect cycling performance, according to what
That's
is.
a great excuse for you to never do another crunch.
So you use a decline bench and you put a 15 or 20 pound weight on your chest, and again you're working up to 20 reps through about 20, and it ends with probably the hardest thing after all that, which is bird dogs and planks. So the bird dogs, when you're all fours, you extend an arm in front of you and the opposite leg behind, and you hold that, and you just extend those out as long as you can, and you build up more reps as you
On your
can.
hands and knees?
Yeah,
Oh,
hands
no,
and knees.
plank, I'm not sure I know.
Core exercises,
Right.
good for
Core is very important.
cycling, so
And
important.
then the planks and side planks, and those are very challenging. But before all that, there's a period where you do light weights, so you don't just jump right into it with heavy weights and you get really sore. So you start with light weights, then you do a strength test. And that will set the weights that you're going to use for your main training as you build up to peak in the weight room. And then before every lifting session, you do 10-minute warm-up on the bike, on the stationary bike. Once you're nice and warm, you do your routine. When you're done with your planks and you're miserable from the workout, it's not, it actually feels good. You feel really good that you've accomplished something. It's pretty hard. You get back on the exercise bike and warm down for 10 minutes.
And you do this all year, or you only do it in the winter, or?
You do it in the winter, and then in the summer, you shift over to a maintenance mode where you don't want to be lifting heavy while you're racing.
Right.
So you go into a maintenance mode where you'll reduce weight and repetitions, and this is according to Stewart's plan. You go into maintenance mode during your race season.
So it's usually 2 to 3 times a week in the winter, and then once a week or so
Yeah,
during
yeah.
the race season.
Yeah.
And then back to
So then too late,
No,
we're just now getting into the peak time to start doing the.
But it all
more
depends
of
on
the weightlifting.
where
You are late, but you're still on time.
You talk about,
Late, but not
Never
too
too
late.
late, Adam.
Never too
you talk about,
Depends on
Yeah.
where you're gonna
I'm looking for the excuse here. Oh, okay, I'm too late, all right.
you hear about all these cyclists peaking at the right time.
Right.
I think it kind of goes to that, you backdate, you plan a little bit. There may be some of those guys that are planning for the tour in July, they may not be doing a lot of stuff that the guys for the early races are already hard at it, you know?
Oh, yeah, for classics.
Yeah, I mean, the classic
Oh,
guys
yeah.
are hammering right now.
Yeah, they are.
And
Yeah. We should be definitely getting
Chris Froom's
inspired
still
by all those
taking
classics.
albuterol treatments.
But what we have to get inspired by, these guys doing the hard work now.
I'm watching the cyclocross.
Yeah, cyclocross leads right into the early season stuff, right? But I'd say from the club perspective, I think, we didn't do this last year, right? We didn't get this kind of, this field, this kind of common goal kind of thing. So from my point of view, it takes so little to be better than we were this year, right? So, if we get a couple of guys that are on podium and Sonny King, and they did so because they listened to Robinson now, or we get a guy like, we had some success here and there, I won't say we didn't, but more people, and more people going, and more cohesive racing, right? It's almost like I'd rather not be on the podium if we had a really good cohesive effort and gave it our best shot, and everybody felt good. And we didn't get podium, so what, But yeah, hopefully we'll get some good results, right?
Which leads into the winter training.
Right. Yes, and I also wanted to say, if you want to race this summer and you're serious about it, I mean, for one thing, it's a lot of fun. Racing well is a lot of fun. And if we go to races together and set up a tent and train together and race together and go out to dinner together and hoop it up at the hotel together, it's going to be a lot of fun. But I'll get in the weight room now, work. I mean, it does take work.
One thing that
I heard
Dwight
one.
talked
Heard that, Adam?
Work at them.
I wrote it here.
Dwight Thompson has been telling me to do just freestanding squats and lunges at home. And you'd be surprised, again, it's not a lot of weights, but you're doing repetition. You're talking 40 sets of lunges and this, that, and the other. You would be surprised at how your legs are just shaking when you're done, and you've done it at home in the living room. So it's not something you have to go and do. It's just that freestanding stuff, the core workout, the leg lunges, that quirky stuff you don't think about.
I forgot bench press too. Bench press, incline press, and you can alternate on different workout days, incline and decline and bench press. 3 sets of 20.
I hate
Because you,
bounce, but I got
stability, yeah.
Christmas musical to attend at
Oh,
6:30 Sunday.
okay, yeah, because we're about to wrap it up.
All right, winter training.
Do it.
Group rides, right?
Winter training, I mean, you know, the name of the game is periodized, right? Winter training is zone 2. And hate to say it, but you can't do zone 2 in a big group. Zone 2 to most.
You're here. I can't do zone 2 when you show up.
Well, yeah, it's real goofy when I show up and insist on doing zone 2. You see how weird that turns out.
Well, you know, our zone 2 rate, you were right, you know, to bring it up, we've tried to maintain a zone 2. Everybody's zone 2 is different
It is.
too. And so you'll get in there and man, one man's zone 2 is another man's zone 0.5. You know, and so you're over there like in zone 5, you know, you're like,
Well, we got Ryan, so me drafting on Ryan in zone 2 is zone 2, easy.